The president of the United States has been abroad. Most recently, he's meeting with Xi of China, but he was at the resort in Egypt for the climate conference. And on Friday, get a pencil and paper, Reavers.
All right.
On
Let
Friday,
me grab my pen.
and this is according to the White House. This isn't me citing some obscure website. This is the White House website. And it's a fact sheet on what President Biden announced at the luxury resort in Egypt where they all flew in. He announced new initiatives to strengthen U.S. leadership in tackling climate change.
Boy.
And I believe of all the political fallout of the last election, the one that's most disconcerting to me is that climate change is not going to go away as a political movement, given who's triumphed, not only nationally, but locally. We're stuck with this BS. And
It ain't going nowhere.
We're stuck with their insanity. But this was dated Friday, just this past Friday, November 11th, and it notes that today, at the 27th UN Climate Conference, COP27, President Biden announced new initiatives to strengthen U.S. leadership tackling the climate crisis. Well, there is no crisis. And galvanizing global action and commitments. President Biden will demonstrate that the United States is following through on its existing commitments and initiatives while accelerating new and expanded domestic and global efforts. I'm setting up the initiatives. As President Biden said at last year's COP in Glasgow, this is a decisive decade.
Now remind me, they all walked to this summit, right? They all were eco-friendly.
Canoes.
No, they
Canoes.
kayaked.
Okay, gotcha.
They kayaked
Gotcha.
in birch bark kayaks.
Nice touch.
Because kayaks are made of plastic often, and that's a petroleum product. So you couldn't use that.
That will also hurt Mother Earth.
Right. As President Biden said at last year's GOP in Glasgow, this is a decisive decade because we don't have time. We don't even have 10 years to live, do we?
We're down to 9, I believe.
9. And the U.S. is acting to lead a clean energy future that leverages market forces, technological innovation, and investments to tackle the climate crisis. There is no crisis. The initiatives the president is announcing today, Friday, also reflects the global imperative to support vulnerable developing country partners. That means they want money in building resilience to a changing climate. I thought it was a crisis. Now you're back to what's reasonable, a changing climate. The climate always changes. Helping them to cope with a problem they did not create. I can't read the whole thing because it's a long document issued by the White House.
That particular document will be posted to the Garage Logic website with today's show.
Let's go through the initiatives.
All right.
Number one, President Biden will bolster global climate resilience.
Ooh.
That means doubling the U.S. pledge to the Adaptation Fund to $100 million.
Okay.
So note $100 million.
Hondo.
And announcing over $150 million
Oh boy.
in new support to accelerate the president's emergency plan for adaptation and resilience. Apparently, they come up with an acronym called PREPARE. These are efforts across Africa. These build on over the $20 million that Biden announced this year to accelerate PREPARE's work in small island developing states.
The hell?
Mm-hmm. Number two, accelerating global climate action, including launching a new initiative to support Egypt in deploying 10 GWs, what's that, gigawatts?
Sure.
Of new wind and solar energy while decommissioning the 5 GWs of inefficient natural gas generation.
Huh?
I don't know. Number three.
Hold on, you didn't give the money, though.
I didn't see. Oh, there's money.
It's at the bottom.
There's money. Here we go. it's something to do with methane, and there's a methane pledge.
Well, Joe, that's leveraging the federal government's over $630 billion in annual purchasing power.
Yeah, what
Wait
are
a
we
minute.
buying?
Yeah.
We're buying action, climate action.
Just a minute. Strengthening proposed domestic
We're
methane
buying
regulations
resilience.
in oil and gas that would reduce U.S. methane from covered sources by 87% below 05 levels, as well as other domestic and international action to tackle methane emissions. That's cows, and advance the global methane pledge, and announcing new actions that would make the U.S. the first national government to require major suppliers to set Paris Agreement aligned emissions reduction goals, leveraging the federal government's over $630 billion in annual purchasing power. I don't think that means they're spending $630 billion on methane reduction.
Well, who knows what it means? It doesn't make any
Doesn't
sense.
mean anything.
It's intentionally gobbledygook.
Number 3, catalyzing investment at the scale required to tackle the climate crisis.
Catalyzing investment at the scale required. So what? Okay.
They want to unlock billions in private
Launching
investment.
new initiative
plus
approaches.
this is strategic. Number 4, engaging all of society
Exactly.
in tackling the climate crisis.
Everybody.
That's us.
We're not leaving anybody out here.
This might be my favorite, including launching a climate gender equity
well,
fund.
that makes sense.
Because that will control nature.
Yes.
A climate gender equity fund, an indigenous peoples finance access facility, which suggests a
So-
building that you'll go to get something, and new exchanges to empower youth across the world to be leaders on resilience and clean energy in their communities. The minute one of these brats walks up my driveway, we got problems.
So am I to understand that the climate is racist
Yes.
or hates
Plus
certain
it's
genders?
not equitable, and it's not gender equitable.
Yeah. Indigenous Peoples Finance Access Facility. What's that?
What's a facility means there's got to be a building where you can go and maybe get money,
The loading dock and
something like that.
vault and the whole deal.
The,
Service
the
elevator.
comprehensive list of announcements by the U.S. delegation at COP27 includes bolstering global climate resilience,
We must
doubling
be.
our pledge to the adaptation fund to $100 million. In Glasgow, we announced our intent to make our first ever contribution to the adaptation fund through an initial pledge of $50 million. Today, Biden announced that U.S. is going to double that to $100 million. It's all your money, people. Even you euphorians, this is your money. Accelerating adaptation in Africa. We get $150 million for that. This includes U.S. support for expanding access to early warning systems for all of Africa. Okay. You mean like a heat warning, I wonder? Or
5 million, 12 million. I'm just doing some math over here. Well, that's 2 different 12 million contributions on this one coming up.
What exactly is
we're going to
an
build a regional weather service, apparently.
Is that what this early warning system for all of Africa is all about?
I guess.
Because it doesn't say.
Well, we're going to throw in 13.6 mil to the Systematic Observations Financing Facility that will help fill weather, water, and climate observation gaps in Africa. In other words, they need more meteorologists. The United States will invest 15 mil to support the co-development and deployment of early warning systems in Africa.
Such the folks that came up with and created the food fraud scandal, they must read something like this and their eyes roll back in their head and their toes curl and they just, what a fantasy this is.
What can they get into this?
Oh my God. Can you think
They're rubbing their hands together.
the billions that they're going to be able to bilk the government out of?
Because these are all countries where the corrupt leaders got the purple Bentley outside the castle.
Yes.
And none of this money is going to go to anything.
No.
Except the corrupt leader.
100% of it.
Now, if we partner, there's something coming up here. I have a question on how to document this on my line item document here.
I'm even running out of the enthusiasm to continue reading this insanity.
So if we partner with Germany on something, because coming down the line here, Joe, Germany and the United States announced over $250 million in resources to unlock $10 billion in commercial investment to support Egypt's clean energy economy.
Okay.
Do we split that bill on this line item?
With the Germans?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, so only put 125 million of our money, not
All right.
250 million of our money.
We're going to build the capacity of African decision makers of today and tomorrow. I guess they think there will be a tomorrow to accelerate adaptation across the continent for years to come. This includes contributing 10 million to support the launch of a new adaptation center in Egypt, the Kairos Center for Learning and Excellence on Adaptation and Resilience, announced by this. This is just a complete redistribution of American taxpayer money. That's all this is. Why in the hell can't Egypt build their own building and call it whatever they want? Supporting locally led efforts to adapt to climate impacts. We're going to give 33.5 mil in support for the Least Developed Countries Initiative for Effective Adaptation and Resilience, which is helping African countries like Uganda, Purple Bentley, Malawi, Purple Bentley, Gambia, Purple Bentley, and Burkina Faso, Purple Bentley, to enhance access to adaptation finance for the most vulnerable.
What the hell does that mean?
No,
Make it easy to get money to buy another Purple Bentley.
this is such. Well, expanding access to risk-based insurance for the most vulnerable. Now we're going to work with multilateral development banks and support the G7 Global Shield against climate risk to protect vulnerable people. You know what? They've created a movement. They're populating it with bureaucrats, and they're all going to become enriched. None of this has anything to do with the temperature.
Ooh, we got a 15 bill coming up
No,
here.
this is rich people making other people rich.
This is rich people flying around to resorts to say that we're not being good people.
Well, we have to win the battle, Joe.
Mobilizing the private sector for adaptation and resilience. That's only 25 mil. I don't want to read that. Further supporting climate smart food systems in Africa. All right. They can't even poop indoors in Africa.
Nope.
Why don't we how about we build a sanitary system? And this will help adapt their food systems to climate impacts through at least 100 mil in adaptation funding. Okay. Advancing climate security through Sahel climate advocacy and peace building with pastoralists.
What in the what?
This
This-
initiative
Yeah,
aims
read it. Yeah.
to reduce the risk of farmer herder climate change related conflict in communities spanning the border of Niger and Benin by conveniently increasing herders' access to political participation in local and national government and improving herders and farmers' access to climate forecasts of rainfall, droughts, and other environmental factors. Because right now, Abdi, the herder, he's out there in the field, and we're not telling him if it's going to rain or not. Now
you know
we
what?
are going to.
We're going to tell them, but Abdi is poor now,
Yeah.
and Abdi is going to be poor then too.
Abdi, you're
Ain't no
getting
money
poor.
for Abdi. At least you'll get a warning
You
that you're
wave
about
when
to
that
get.
purple Bentley drives by, because that's your leader.
Yeah, there's your money right there.
And he'll be
Abdi.
eating steaks, and you're going to be eating sheep poop.
again.
All right, I've got some significant dollar amounts here.
Well, I don't even
Oh,
think
we're not
it's-
even close to
Hell, I'm
done,
not
Chris.
halfway through.
No, I was skimming ahead through all the paragraphs, and
We don't have enough time. Seriously, we don't have enough time left on Earth, according to these idiots,
right.
Chris,
to spend this much money.
Chris, no matter what figure you give us, it's going to be 500 billion short of what we're really going to spend.
That's a
Absolutely.
good point.
What do you
So-
got so far,
So
Chrissy?
just in the line items in paragraph form, I've got $1.394 billion, but that doesn't include two separate line items that were in two other separate line item figures that were 2.3 billion and 15 billion.
Oh yeah,
Those
is there
were
a 15
separate.
bill in there.
There is, yeah. That
I
one
didn't get to it yet, did I?
it was down the line.
Yeah.
It was down the line. But
There's
you know
no
what? The one that you cited earlier, Joe, the gender equity fund,
Oh,
the
that's
climate.
How much are we spending on that?
That actually wasn't as bad. If you go through the list of things, it only ranked about 18th on the list because that was only 21 million we're spending on gender equity fund.
Is that to get men and women to worry equally about climate?
With initial seed funding of 6 million, USAID is co-launching a new climate gender equity fund in partnership with
Oh.
Amazon, which will leverage
Oh.
private sector contributions to help provide women, climate leaders with technical skills, networks, and capital to develop and scale climate solutions.
So women have been been prevented from
You
the
guys,
climate,
you
rain?
guys,
No?
quit saying it wrong. It's her, she,
Yes,
they.
or she.
Her, she,
The
they,
fund
them.
is enabled by USAID's commitment to gender responsive climate action, including its allocating more than 21 mil, as I mentioned, from the Gender Equity and Equality Action Fund, surpassing its 14 million from last year's commitments. We had to upper Joe a little bit. It was only 14 mil last year. Now it's 21 mil.
Supporting climate resilience and sustainable development and
Wow.
SIDS, SIDS. Find me what that means. I don't even care what that means. Through the local 2030 Islands Network. So we're going to have some island-led resilience through engagement and technical support through the network, which currently includes 20 island economies. You know what the New York Times travel magazine had yesterday? These beautiful photographs of cottages in the water in Belize.
It'd be tough to get there
but
by
that's
a
the same
rowboat.
newspaper that'll tell you,
Right.
you know, well, never mind. What the hell?